Iran taunts the U.S., saying President Obama's new sanctions deal represents a surrender by the West. This is Special Report. Good evening, I'm Brett Baer. So much for being graceful winners. Iran is proclaiming victory over the U.S. and its allies in a deal that will ease crippling economic sanctions. In the process, Iran is reinforcing the point of the deal's critics, including many Democrats, that the deal is a major win for the Islamic Republic and a major defeat for the West. Chief White House correspondent Ed Henry has tonight's top story.
In front of a huge crowd in Iran today, President Hassan Rouhani declared triumphantly the wall of sanctions has been broken by the interim nuclear agreement. And he charged President Obama and key U.S. allies have basically waved the white flag.
Do you know what the Geneva Agreement means? It means the big powers have surrendered before the great Iranian nation.
Rouhani even took to social media to tweet, "World powers surrendered to Iranian nation's will." A perfect storm of controversy when you add to the mix Iran's foreign minister decided to lay a wreath at the grave of an assassinated Hezbollah terrorist who killed Americans at Iran's direction. And yet another Iranian official claimed there's a secret side agreement to the nuclear deal that may have more favorable terms for Tehran.
It doesn't matter what they say, it matters what they do.
White House officials today insisted the provocative comments from Iran are nothing more than an attempt to please hardliners, though they did denounce the grave visit and sharply denied there's any secret deal.
Why would the Iranian side be out there suggesting there's a side agreement? It's just,
well, again,
they were quoted as
what Iranian leaders say for their domestic audience purposes is far less meaningful than what they do and what the agreements commit them to.
All of this increasing pressure on Senate Majority Leader Harry Reid to schedule a vote on a bill to prepare new sanctions against Iran in case the deal falls apart.
We're going to continue to press the Majority Leader to allow a vote on an issue that obviously enjoys the support of a very large bipartisan majority.
With an increasing number of Democrats defying the president by signing on to the bill, his aides have pushed back by charging the lawmakers should admit they really want war instead of diplomacy. That drew a sharp rebuke today from House Democratic Whip Steny Hoyer, who declared, quote, "I think that is absolutely untrue, an irresponsible assertion, and ought to be clarified and retracted." The White House would not retract it, but touted the support of other top Democrats like Senator Tim Kaine, who today said Congress should hold off for now on new sanctions and, quote, "give diplomacy a chance." As for Reid, he will not tip his hand on scheduling a vote.
While the legislative process is working forward here, I'm going to sit and be as fair an umpire as I can be.
Now, on a call today sponsored by the Israel Project, a former IAEA inspector called on the White House to release as much of the paperwork as possible. The White House has thus far refused to release the text of the agreement, fueling suspicion on Capitol Hill, though Jay Carney pledged today they'll release those details soon. Brett?
Ed Henry live on the North Lawn. Ed, thank you. The chairman of the Senate Intelligence Committee still believes groups with ties to al-Qaeda were responsible for the Benghazi terror attack September 11th, 2012. Democratic Senator Dianne Feinstein tells The Hill a New York Times conclusion that the terror group was not responsible, quote, "doesn't jibe with me." Tonight, Chief Washington correspondent James Rosen continues his reports on new information about the attack from the Benghazi transcripts, top secret until Monday afternoon. This evening, what the Obama administration did and did not do to get ready for the 9/11 anniversary.
On September 10th, 2012, the day before the Benghazi attacks, the White House issued a press release entitled "Readout of the President's Meeting with Senior Administration Officials on Our Preparedness and Security Posture on the 11th Anniversary of September 11th." It referred to specific measures taken to protect American persons and facilities abroad.
There were numerous steps taken.
But in top secret testimony before the House Armed Services Subcommittee on Oversight and Investigations last year, the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, General Martin Dempsey, said the meeting was a conference call and that Libya never came up. Congresswoman Martha Roby, Republican of Alabama, chaired 9 classified hearings examining U.S. force posture on the day that press release went out.
It was misleading. And quite frankly, as demonstrated on September 11th, it was wrong.
Using military lingo, Congressman Austin Scott, Republican of Georgia, asked Dempsey if the September 10 session with President Obama triggered any moves to shorten response times. Did we move anybody from, say, an N+6 to an N+4, knowing that the September 11th anniversary was coming up? I don't recall directing that from the national level, Dempsey acknowledged. Now, there were, as you know, the combatant commanders have the authority to do that based on their assessment, so there was no direction to do that from me or the SecDef, meaning Secretary of Defense Leon Panetta. Did you anticipate that September 11th, being the date that it is, going forward, that we would have wanted to drop those notification times? Recall that in the run-up to September 11th, Dempsey replied, the threat streams took us other places other than Libya. But General Carter Ham, commander of AFRICOM, who was excluded from the September 10 session, testified he and his superiors shared grave concern about terrorism in Libya. Indeed, Dempsey admitted last year the threat stream had taken him directly to Benghazi.
Did you ever get the message that said they could not withstand a sustained attack on the consulate?
I was tracking that intelligence.
At the White House, the man whose office issued the September 10 press release saw no significance in the fact that neither Panetta nor Dempsey reordered force posture after their conference call with the president.
Our military and our other services devoted to our national security don't wait till September 10th to prepare for contingencies on an anniversary like September 11th of any year.
Marine Corps Colonel George Bristol, a special ops commander, testified that he warned U.S. officials stationed in Libya about intelligence showing an increased threat on 9/11 and that he was, quote, uncomfortable with American security posture there and in other countries, Brett.
And you have more details on FoxNews.com?
Yeah, the online story.
Okay, James, thank you. The U.S. is pushing back against Israel over a comment from its defense minister insulting the top American diplomat. Moshe Ya'alon says Secretary of State John Kerry's involvement in the Middle East peace process is motivated by, quote, an incomprehensible obsession and a messianic feeling. That did not go over too well at the White House.
To question Secretary Kerry's motives and distort his proposals is not something we would expect from the defense minister of a close ally.
Late today, the Israeli minister said he had no intention of offending Kerry. Egyptians are voting on a new constitution, the first since the overthrow of President Mohamed Morsi last summer. Morsi's supporters promised violence and called for a boycott. 11 people were killed in sporadic clashes at several locations. The new charter bans political parties based on religion, gives women equal rights, and protects the status of minority Christians. $1.5 billion in aid to Egypt is part of a $1 trillion government spending bill unveiled last night. It's supposed to end, at least for a while, the budget gridlock on Capitol Hill. Chief Congressional Correspondent Mike Emanuel is here tonight with details. Good evening, Mike.
Well, Brett, good evening. It is more than 1,500 pages and would fund the government through October. The $1.012 trillion omnibus package would increase funding for Head Start to support early childhood education. It would allow the U.S. Postal Service to continue Saturday delivery, provide $85 billion for the war in Afghanistan, and cut funding for the IRS and ban targeting of groups. Some outside conservative organizations say it doesn't reduce spending enough, but a House appropriator says it's a good deal.
I'm a conservative and I'm going to vote for it. I actually think it keeps with our principles that we've set forth. This is the third year in a row that we've actually reduced discretionary spending.
The measure was hammered out by top appropriators, Democrat Senator Barbara Mikulski and Republican Congressman Hal Rogers. Some House Democrats are complaining because it doesn't extend long-term unemployment benefits. Yet at the White House, President Obama expressed support for this package while warning lawmakers if they don't get this done, he'll do it himself.
I've got a pen and I've got a phone, and I can use that pen to sign executive orders and take executive actions and administrative actions that move the ball forward in helping to make sure our kids are getting the best education possible, making sure that our businesses are getting the kind of support and help they need.
Congress does not care for that type of executive action, and all indications are lawmakers want to get this done, likely by Friday. Brett?
Mike Emanuel live on the Hill tonight. Mike, thank you. Stocks had their biggest day of the year so far. The Dow gained 116. The S&P 500 was up 20. The Nasdaq finished ahead 70. President Obama and fellow Democrats are targeting what they term income inequality as a rallying point for their 2014 congressional campaigns. To some, it is a call for fairness. To others, it's a slap in the face of capitalism. Tonight, correspondent Doug McElway looks at how the income divide fits in with the American economic model.
Income inequality has been on President Obama's agenda ever since Joe the Plumber raised the issue in 2008. But the president is elevating its importance, calling it
the defining challenge of our time.
He cites statistics that show the decline in upward mobility since 1979.
A child born in the top 20% has about a 2 in 3 chance of staying at or near the top. A child born into the bottom 20% has a less than 1 in 20 shot at making it to the top.
Class resentment is building.
Does it bother you that some CEOs make millions when their workers don't?
Yes, I think everybody should be treated as equal, and they should make enough money so that they can be stable and comfortable.
But such resentment is sometimes selective.
Does it bother you that Tiger Woods made $78 million last year?
It doesn't bother me. If he can make it, he needs to make it.
But whether it's a CEO or a golf star, that's how capitalism rewards and punishes. Some people are better, smarter, harder working, or luckier than others.
There will always be income inequality, I guess in the most literal sense, unless people earn identical incomes, all people, which we haven't seen, and I don't think most people would want to see that.
Left-leaning economists warn of the growing equality gap.
In 2012 alone, the top 1% saw their incomes rise by nearly 20%, while the bottom 99% saw their incomes rise only by 1%. So what we've seen during the recovery is, yes, higher income folks have benefited more.
Nobody in America is poor just because someone else is rich. In fact, consider if you were to double everybody's income in America, you would do great things for the poor, but you would also increase inequality.
Numerous studies show the greatest predictor of poverty is not income inequality.
The academic literature is very solid on what it takes to stay out of poverty. Number 1, graduate school. Number 2, if you're not married, don't have a baby. And number 3, get a job, even a minimum wage, entry-level job, and stick with it.
Tanner points out that only 3% of us who have a full-time job live in poverty. But today, only 62.8% of Americans are in the labor force. That's the lowest participation rate since 1977. Brett?
Doug, thank you. Up next, will President Obama call for real change in the way the NSA keeps track of you? But first, here's what some of our Fox affiliates across the country are covering tonight. KSAA in Albuquerque, New Mexico, with a school shooting in nearby Roswell. Authorities say a student opened fire, hitting 2 other teens. The alleged shooter is in custody. One victim is in critical condition tonight, the other serious. KDFW in Dallas and a federal judge's rejection of a $765 million settlement of NFL concussion claims. The judge says the sum may not be enough to cover injured players. And this is a live look at Los Angeles from our Fox affiliate there. Fox 11, the big story there tonight is the search of pop star Justin Bieber's home by detectives. Bieber is accused of involvement in an egg-tossing vandalism case that caused thousands of dollars in damage to a neighbor's home. That's tonight's live look outside the Beltway from Special Report. We'll be right back.